What's going on, man? It's me, your best friend in the whole wide world, Jason fucking V from the Jasons. And the reason this interview is starting differently than all the other interviews I did is because I'm a jackass and I forgot to hit the record button when I started talking to this guy. So, unfortunately, about 15 minutes of our discussion got cut off. The good news is that the beginning of all conversations is just reserved for bullshit and small talk. So, you're getting paratroopered in right about at the good part. It doesn't matter. And while I've got you here, let me go ahead and give you an introduction to the subject of today's interview. And maybe you're not aware, but I spoke today with Grim Deeds. Grim Deeds is the avatar of human pain and misery. He wears a soiled wedding dress and an emasculating miss painted across his chest. He wears the sweatpants of humiliation and pulls up the tube socks of lethargy, and he also resides in the women's bathroom where he applies a sloppy coat of faux black metal makeup in the environment where some big woman just took a shit. And when he comes out onto stage bearing the cross of the knowledge of existential crisis and the fact that we are all just hurtling towards our own demise to a finish line where there is no prize. That's Grim Deeds. He carries the weight of the fucking world on his back so that all of the pop punk kids like you, like me, can keep living our Ramones core fantasies, can keep singing about loving that girl and going to the prom, when we all know that the prom was many, many years ago. Grim Deeds is a martyr for punk rock, and he's also a goddamn hero. Now, that's just my interpretation. He might have a different one of his own, and by the end of this interview, you might have a different one of your own too.
Kind of stuff. But still, I mean, nobody like said it was, you know, inappropriate to do that. It's just that's me. And I think, I mean, I'm a one man band too, so I kind of get a pass in that sense because it's like an anomaly anyway. And I've done this like band camp approach rather than doing the traditional thing. Most of the stuff I've recorded at home. You know, very few of my releases are proper in that sense. And the label that I'm on and the label that I do is also like improper in the sense that it's non-traditional. So I think it's, you know, the thing that everybody preaches in art is like be yourself, be original, do things differently, but that's really hard to practice in actuality. And I think for me, just because of the limits of my life and like the different hats that I have to wear as a dad, as a professional, as a, you know, person who doesn't have a lot of um you know, like actual in-person connection to people who are into this stuff, like I tried to make it work however I could, and it came out this way. So I think like me wanting to do it and being driven to do it is what created the originality, just because of the circumstances. And the most important thing was that I did it, because it's hard to actually do something, create it, put it out there earnestly, and see what happens. You know, there's a lot of fear behind that, but once you start doing it, I just kind of got myself on a program to just do it, do it, do it, do it, and in the words of Jay Retard, it's like he did a ton of stuff, you know, in his lifetime, and his life was ultimately, you know, too short in my opinion. But he was always saying like, there's no such thing as writer's block. You just do it, and like you can do as much as you want. You know, it's all dependent on you. So I think of it in those terms too, because I'm in my 40s now. So, you know, I want to keep doing it as long as I can. Harvey Picar from American Splendor, that comic, he has a really great quote. It might even be on his epitaph about, you know, the purpose of life, which is basically to, in his words, I'll try and paraphrase. It's like, take care of yourself, take care of your family, do what you got to do, and like try to enjoy life and be creative. Like being creative, I think is a really important aspect of being a human being and sharing that, having community around it.
I,
That's
uh, I,
a
I,
long answer, but
no, I think like there's a couple approaches. You know, there are a couple approaches because I know I have a good personal friend who he started a band, and this guy took a very different approach than me. We're like great friends, but we're almost like polar opposites, but yin and yang, you know. But he had this band that he was working on, and they worked on becoming a band for 11 years. and then finally put out this record after it was polished and cleaned and, razor sharp, razor tight. And we always talk about how, my approach has always been, I'm going to use whatever resources I have to put it out right now and create it. And then it'll just get less shitty as it goes on. It'll get better as it
Yeah.
goes on. And I know, like, I know that you also have that sort of mentality where it's like, I'm just going to put it out and the goodness in it will shine through regardless of recording quality or, how you have to record. I know we've talked before, like, you do vocals in your car.
Mm.
And it's like, if we put so many limitations on ourselves, you may not always get anything accomplished. I know for me, like, if I waited till I was 100% happy with everything, we wouldn't have our first two records, at least probably the first three.
Right. Well, another thing, that's a great conversation topic, by the way. I think we could go far with this, but there's also ways to have your cake and eat it too. Like I've re-recorded tons of songs with help and like made albums that were all based on re-recordings that sound awesome. So I have no regrets because I wrote the song, I put it out, people already, who knew about it liked it or whatever. And now here's this version with Cedric from Sweden, this metal master who's going to record everything and make it sound awesome. So you just have to like look for those opportunities. So Kepi Gully has done this in his career. A lot of other bands like the Queers put out the Summer Hits Volume 1. Like that's a great album. That's all a lot of their classic songs in it. And the recording, I think there's a benefit to it. Like I like the wimpy version of Wimpy Good of what's the song? Kicked Out of the Weebles. Yeah, but like the song on the Summer Hits, it hits different, bro. It hits different. It's like it's got the crunch, that it's satisfying 90s crunch that you don't have on the wimpy version. So it's cool to have, you can just keep going and there's no need to stop the momentum. I watched a pro skater, Josh Kalis, interview. It's like an old interview, but I always look at skate shit. And he was saying to have longevity, and he was talking about as a skateboarder, but he said you got to just sprinkle as you go and keep going and don't worry about holding everything for the long-term projects, because who cares if it doesn't make it in? Like just a little bit here, a little bit there. That's how the longevity can be established. And I have friends, man, who have severe I would call it a impairment because they over focus on making things perfect and then they ultimately don't do anything. Like I've got a buddy, good friend of mine, man. He actually has helped me a lot with Grimdeeds, especially at the beginning. And he's an amazing musician, talented, great songwriter too, especially with the metal, like intricate kind of, I would say like melodic death metal, but maybe a little more, a little slight like metalcore, like breakdown influence and stuff. And he's got that genre like better than anybody else. But he's released a demo with like 2 or 3 songs, and it's been like 10 years, and it's great. But man, it's like he just keeps going back. It's like the kid who draws the picture and rips it out and rips it out and rips it out and crumbles it up and never settles. Yeah. Like you gotta settle on something, otherwise you don't allow yourself to make the progress that you need to make. So like a lot of Google searches, when I Google search songwriting tips and stuff like that, it's like finish your songs. That's an imperative. You have to finish things to get the experience under your belt. It's different than like holding on to the idea and waiting, wait and see. You got to finish it, because ultimately whatever you finish is not going to be perfect anyway. But once you finish it, it gives you that momentum. And like the reason I have my routine now is because of the momentum that I started, at the very beginning. Because even at the very beginning, I was putting stuff out pretty quickly, Yeah.
And I think punk rock as a genre, maybe this is why we both gravitated towards it, because it allows for that, where like,
yeah,
we're talking about metal, unless you're talking about black metal, and there are many, many Grimdeeds parallels with black metal, besides your makeup, your recording style, your approach, all that stuff. But like, and all of the satanic imagery, of course, which I love. But
yeah.
Like I think punk rock for me definitely became a thing where early on I saw this band. There's a documentary called Hype, and it's about the grunge scene in the 90s, right? And I was watching it. I hate grunge, by the way, but I was watching this documentary because it was a documentary about music when I was pretty young. And this band came on, and they were called Some Velvet Sidewalk. and they were bad, and their singer looked like a dork, and I hated everything about them. A shout out to Some Velvet Sidewalk. I'm sure they're not a band anymore. They were on this video, and I was watching this crowd go crazy, and I was like, "This is terrible. Why is this crowd going crazy?" And then I thought, I can at least do that. And
Yeah.
so Some Velvet Sidewalk, this band, became incredibly inspirational to me to go like, it almost made me go like, I can at least do that. And so I sort of, it gave me confidence, you know, and I'm here slandering the name of this poor band who's probably not been around forever, but it gave me confidence that maybe I could do that. And that started my journey into punk rock. So
Yeah.
I think that's a genre. We were talking the other day, you know, kind of briefly, but there are a couple things that punk rock has to offer or had to offer. And it was for me accessibility.
Mhm.
And number two, it was a refuge for kids that didn't fit in anywhere. And we were talking about the fact that maybe punk rock isn't needed as much now, that I feel like the youth of today are a little bit more diverse and a little bit more accepting. So I don't know if you want to, you know,
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that, but I thought about that after we even discussed it a little bit, you know?
Yeah, that's a good topic to talk about. Before I do, I want to say like about your accessibility point. I think within any genre of music or just all music in general, if you dig deep enough, you can find something that will feel like a permission giving band or artist where you're like, okay, there's something in this that I could do myself. Like, and like you were saying, if I can at least do that, that's a starting point.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when I started writing pop punk songs, I wanted to find super like underground, non-popular bands because I figured, okay, they're doing it for the sake of doing it, and like I listened to it and realized, like, okay, yeah, like there's aspects of this that I can relate to. Like I could do this at home. It sounds like it was recorded in their garage, so I could probably do it. If
Yeah.
you're all, like when I was growing up listening to music, everything was professionally done. So I had a lot of like, doubts about whether I could actually do that or not. And I was a skateboarder. I loved music the entire time, but skateboarding seemed more attainable to me because it's like, all right, well, like I'm hanging out with these skaters, I'm seeing it done right in front of me. Like it gives me a sense of what I could do, at whatever level. But I didn't have that with music until I started digging into punk rock more, into the underground, because it felt more, like doable to me. And I started playing late. Like I didn't start playing guitar until I was 25 or 26. So, there's, I think confidence and having a access point is really important as a musician, because I couldn't imagine if I had only listened to like technical death metal or something and it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to learn playing guitar now and like have to build up to that level. Whoa. So the first song I ever learned to play was a Ramones song, and that felt great because I'm like, well, they're a legendary band and I just learned one of their songs. So I could create songs. They're not going to be as good as the Ramones, but at least it's something. People will be able to associate it with something familiar,
Yeah.
because that gives it some kind of legitimacy. But as far as punk being necessary today, I teach middle school, so I see kids and what they rally around and what they seem to have in common is like this broader techno culture, of YouTube and games and memes and stuff like that. That you know, it's all it seems like anything goes, and they're all for it. It's not like there's like specific things that's like, oh, like you're one of those. Even with like more niche interests like anime, like tons of kids watch it. Like when I was growing up, like anime was just for weird comic book dorks. Now it's like it's on Netflix, everywhere. And skateboarding is an Olympic sport now. So go to the skate park. Yeah, everybody's going to be there, including like the parents with their toddlers and stuff. Dude, when we were skating, like rednecks would throw bottles at us and call us faggot and stuff, and like we weren't cool. No one thought we were cool, And I sound old now, like, oh, back in the day, well, we were skaters and punks. It really meant, but I just feel like today there isn't as much of a push to be transgressive, I guess, because the humor might be different or something, or what they've consumed, what they've experienced. They kind of just accept things. And their parents were into gnarly stuff. Like my mom liked the Beatles, You know, there was no song called Entrails Ripped from a Virgin's Cunt by Cannibal Corpse. You know, she didn't have that. But like kids growing up now, they could just easily see that like what we grew up with was already pretty much as extreme as it got. But there's something about getting to that point which really lit a fire in me to be creative and have an identity. And I don't know, maybe since it's already there to begin with, there's no need, or I don't know what it is. I've had some middle school students who went on to form like metal bands or get into, you know, more underground stuff, but it's pretty rare. I mean, just based on the area where I teach in like an affluent community in the Bay Area. So, you know, it all depends where you are. But
Yeah.
yeah, my kids are just into like the same, you know, kind of common interests of entertainment. And it falls under this just like bigger umbrella of entertainment. It's not like niche entertainment like we had.
Yeah, and I think that's like I look at that as being like it's proof that maybe the world is changing for the better because there's less division amongst children. Now,
Mm,
you watch the mass media and it'll tell you that are everybody's separate and but when I look at kids, I don't see that so much. And I think that's good for the world. I think it explains a lot to me why I don't see very many kids, teenagers giving a shit about punk. You know,
yeah.
I go to a metal show, I go to a hip hop show, or any other genre almost, and there's a seems like there's a vibrant like living culture because maybe metal's more about musicianship and maybe
Hmm.
you know hip hop's more about sort of the lyricism, but punk rock always felt like the refuge for people like us. And yeah, I almost just wonder if it's not like, you know, the superhero that we don't necessarily need. The Earth's not in fucking danger right now. And you know, so I I just wonder what it's going to be like. I'm trying, and I know you also do the same with your music. Like I'm never trying to fit solidly into the punk rock genre, and the more confidence you gain with each release, the more you feel like you can push out of it and stuff.
Yep.
And you know, it goes back to taking the risks. Like when you were starting and you put out your first song, there's a risk there because you can come under criticism or somebody can tell you it sucks or whatever. And the same thing is true with growth. And I so that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about and get your perspective on because um I've been talking to some people recently. I was talking with somebody who doesn't play music, and they brought up a point that like made me kind of scratch my head. You know, they had said they were talking about a project and a review for a project that I had had. And from my perspective, I didn't see any sort of negative review. What I saw was someone who was like had a very like non-attacking criticism of something that I had been involved in, and I shared that. You know, it was like, yeah, there's a review, man, check it out. But this person said to me like, well, what are you going to do now? Like, what happens now that someone didn't love what you did? And I was like, well, what do you mean? So are you going to stop? And like it kind of made me think like there's an old psychological terminology called differentiation of self, which is like very, you know, because be, because someone else thinks something, I don't have to think that as well. I can have my own thoughts and feelings. And my response to that person was I said, well, like, you know, by the time it leaves here and goes out into the world, it's already passed my rigorous you know, 12-step inspection. And
Yeah.
I wonder, like, for you, like, what that's like and how you handle criticism. I don't even know if I've never seen anyone specifically criticize your stuff online, but I know if it's been online, it's been criticized at some point. So,
Yeah.
how do you handle criticism for your work and for things that you do and keep going?
No, thanks. That's a great question. Well, I think like as an artist, you have to understand people's attention spans and the kind of temporary upward trajectory of any artist. Like you can get up to a certain point where people care, and then maybe you'll have some real hardcore fans, but then like how much are people really willing to care after a certain point? Like I just released my 18th CD, you know, like who's listening to all 18 CDs at this point? Like probably not anyone, but at least, my name is out there and it's established that I'm doing this thing, and you can drop in at any time and check out what I'm doing, and I'll try and mix it up, make it interesting for you. There've been some times when I've done stuff that I knew wasn't very good, or I knew there was something about it that bothered me. So, I expected to receive criticism, and I got it. And it was like interesting because you never know how someone else is going to take your approach and how they're going to interpret a song, but there's a couple of examples of ones where I knew that it would probably, like, people wouldn't get it the way I had intended it. And I just had to accept that, because there was a reason that I wanted to write it and get it out in the first place. And those were for me, those are my reasons. But, people don't like it for this reason or whatever. And it's like understandable. So, like, I'll give you an example. The song, I Don't Care About Your Kids. I wrote that before I was a dad. And I was writing it from the perspective of being a young guy who wasn't so young anymore. And everybody else was starting to have a family, and I was feeling pressure, and I was resentful about it. Plus, I work with kids all day. So I felt like, why can't I just have a life without kids? Like, why can't I just pursue music and do things? Like, I'm contributing to society. Why is there this pressure? And then I also, from my insecure point of view at that time, was like feeling resentful towards families in a way, because it's like, oh, you're just throwing all this in our face. Like, you're bragging because you have kids, and who cares? Like, that's the most common thing in the world, is to have kids. And like, I don't care, no one fucking cares. It wasn't about the fact that, like, I think some people took it as like, I don't care about children in general. Right. Even though that's my job. Like, I've made a career of caring about children because I'm a teacher and I'm a father now. So obviously the game has changed. But it wasn't really about that. It was more about the ego of the adults in a situation where they use parenting as their identity. And that's what I was trying to write about. And how, like, okay, like, this is your humble brag or whatever. Like, I don't give a fuck. That's what it was about. But people didn't take it that way. And there was a comment that went up where it's like, I can't believe this guy's a teacher and he's an asshole for writing this song or something. But then it got, I don't know, someone was like, oh no, he's cool. And then the person deleted the comment. But like, I understand the comment. I understand where that comes from. Like, if you're hearing it from that point of view, it makes sense. And there's another song too. These are like the two songs that I would consider unfortunate, I guess, because they're the songs that pop up instantly when you search for me. And they're the ones that are most frequently misunderstood. So the one is the one about not liking kids. And then the other one is I Can't Listen to NoFX.
Yeah.
I love NoFX. They're one of my favorite bands. That song was written, though, as kind of a sarcastic tribute, because it was like a song that sounds like them, or at least I was trying to sound like him. It's like Fat Mike. But I've met him before, and I've been around those people before, and I've gotten kind of a little bit of an inside view of what things are like and stuff. And there were things at the time that I wrote the song that bothered me about them that I felt like expressing too. It's like, here's a tribute where I'm going to talk shit the whole time because I thought that would be funny, but it's also coming from a place of truth. What it came across to some people is like, oh, you're just complaining because you're not as successful as them, or you're trying to get more attention by talking shit about them. And it really wasn't about that. It was more about the conflict of being a fan of a band, but also having problems with them personally, and feeling disconnected from them at the same time that you're feeling very connected through the songs and through the music. Because I think he's a very, a very significant songwriter in our generation, someone whose influence and legacy are going to, be very, very, fondly remembered, I guess. But it's also the case that, like, I've been in situations with him where, like, I was trying to approach him as a fan, and maybe I did it in kind of a faux pas kind of way, and he let me know pretty quickly, pretty directly, that I was like a mark, like, like, you're an idiot. Don't come at me like this. Like, I've been dealing with people like you for 35 years. Like, I don't need another fan coming up and telling me that they like punk and drug lick and shit like that. And that, one of the harder things to get over from an ego perspective is being let down by somebody you admire. And that's all personal stuff. You don't have to take it personally, but there have been times when, like, things related to NoFX, like, I took personally, because I think so highly of them as a band and of Mike as a songwriter, that I felt like I need to express something true, which, by the way, no one else has come out with a song where they're trashing that band, even though they've kind of been asking for it, over the years, because of their style. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I had all these different sources of inspiration for the song. But if you read the YouTube comments, people are coming across like, oh, well, you wrote a song sounding exactly like No Effects, even though, like that's obvious. And then there's other
Right.
people, oh, you're just complaining and you need more attention and you want more shine for yourself. And that's the whole purpose of the song. And that's unfortunate because one thing I am sensitive about is I don't want to be the kind of person who is chiefly concerned with my own, reputation or impact, like, it bothers me when people insinuate that I'm doing things to be cool or doing things to be more successful. Um, yeah, yeah. Like one of the times I got my feelings really hurt is Ray from Teenage Bottle Rocket said that, Dustin, you're the kind of guy who will seek out the coolest person in the room to talk to or something like that. And I was like, God, man, that makes me sound like a total asshole. And like, he was probably right in a certain sense because I always try to go up to people. Like I was going up to the dude from Nerf Herder actually, and I was like, hey, I really like your songs, blah 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 blah. Like, check me out. But I really just wanted to talk to him about songwriting. It wasn't about me in the way that Ray was insinuating, but it really hurt me to hear that from him. And that's water under the bridge. But like those types of things, I'm vulnerable to that as an artist because. And Ray, one time Ray asked me like, "Oh, do you want to be famous? Is that your goal?" Because I said something about fame, and he's like, "Oh, is that what you're trying to do here? Trying to become famous?" And I was like, "No, man." He always gives me shit, but it was like, I think you do have to keep your ego in check, and I'm sensitive to that as an artist because you are putting stuff out there for people to notice. Like you obviously want people to know about it and enjoy it, and then you want to have some feedback. But there is a line that you can cross, and I try to get close to that edge, but I don't want to come across as a fucking douche,
Right, right. And I think anybody that anyone like it's such a strange thing. Like even that comment is strange to me because if you think about it, it's like, well, who wouldn't seek out the coolest person in there? I'm gonna find the most boring person in the room and talk to that person. No. If I'm psychoanalyzing that situation, I'm looking at that person, I'm saying, you're upset, sir, because I sought out someone other than you to talk to. And maybe you're not the coolest person in the fucking room. That's where I go with that. And it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think when ego comes into play with artists, we all have ego to an extent, but ego's not always a negative thing. Ego has something to do with pride in your own band. But I use this on another talk that I had with someone, the old term, working yourself into a shoot where you start to buy into your own hype. And that,
Yeah.
I think that's when bands fail, is when somebody buys into their own hype to the point where they allow themselves to be a dick to someone who likes their music because we're all that fucking guy. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Fat Mike, a good example, has the luxury of probably having hung out with and rubbed elbows with bands that he liked and he appreciated. And it's like, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
when you're at that level, it's easy to forget, but we also meet people who don't forget. We meet people who are super fucking cool all the time, So
Yeah. Well, what you're saying, man, it rings very true to what my point was. You you and I are very lucky because we're at least established enough where we can kind of chill in our own little, atmosphere that we've created and know, like, for example, people are going to watch this, like,
yeah,
I don't have any doubts about that. And that's awesome, because we've gotten to a point where people know who we are. When you're getting to that point, that's when I felt the most vulnerability. It's like, oh, check me out, check me out, check me out. And like, I don't like to be that guy, but you do have to do that to an extent to at least get yourself out there. But now that I'm here in a place where like, I feel connected to the community, let's put it that way. Now I have choices that I can make and I don't have to make them with that chip on my shoulder, which is a great feeling. And I started a label pretty much specifically for that reason, because I wanted people who are in that position that I used to be in to have someone to reach out to who isn't going to treat them like shit. Because I'll tell you, man, the laptop punk records, I have put out almost 100% of what people have sent me. And a lot of people sent me stuff who I didn't even know who they were. And they just like, oh, check this out. And I was like, hell yeah, man. Like, I dig that. Let's do it. Let's fucking do it.
yeah.
And the feeling of giving somebody that confidence and acknowledgement, there's no substitute for that. So I feel really lucky that I've been able to like create something that's legitimate enough. Like I just put out Jughead's little EP. I don't know if you saw that. It's called The Mitochondriacs. Him
No,
singing, him playing guitar. It's Eddie and Marky from and Maria in Chicago who played backup, and yeah, it's his little like a pretty cool artistic project that he's doing, and he's donating everything to charity. So mitochondriats, check it out. But I have like him. He's willing to work with me because he knows, at least I have a little bit of reach. It's going to be worth it for him to put it out on my thing. But then I'm also collecting as many like unknown people that I can, because there are plenty of people out there who have something to offer, and they're just in that stage of development where they haven't perfected it yet, but they need somebody to say like, yeah, you have something good, go with it and develop it, and here's your start. That's what I did with Lesser Creatures too. You probably remember like Nick, when he was first starting out, he was just like a dude who I'd sent him a record, and he's like, oh yeah, I have songs too. So those are the conversations that can lead to something cool if you are interested. And I got to give Fat Mike credit, because he signed tons of awesome bands, and he's been a mentor to tons of awesome songwriters, and all the stuff that he's done through Fat Records and Honest Don and Pink and Black, and everything that he's contributed to punk rock in the community is what has inspired me to do it, honestly. So, I got to give him a lot of credit too.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, I come, I always say that Ben Weasel got me in the divorce. Like, so I come from the position of being an admirer of somebody who I'm pretty sure is the biggest asshole in the world. And, my goal one day is to either have Ben Weasel shit on my band or like my band, either way. But, I think people who contribute to the scene 100%, like Fat Mike has contributed to the scene, Ben Weasel has contributed to the scene
For sure.
in ways that we don't even realize. Like certainly Ben Weasel's responsible for little pieces of the Jasons, but who knows if he would ever have himself decided that he wanted to contribute to that. It's against his will. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that's weird, because for like someone like me, someone like you, we develop a connection to these people completely independently of a relationship, which is strange, like
Oh yeah.
uh, I have a Ben Weasel narrative of how Ben Weasel has influenced me, but we've
Mm-hmm.
only met one time and it was for 5 seconds. The way it happened was we went to see Screeching Weasel, Jason 3D and we were standing outside, and we were going to wait for Ben Weasel to get him to sign my leather jacket. No matter what, we're going to get him to sign the inside of my leather jacket. So, and when Jason 3D puts his mind to something, he's going to make it happen. Because
Yeah.
I'm less of a social guy, believe it or not. Like, I'm kind of like, I like to talk to people, but I like to talk more on like a level like this rather than going up to somebody I don't really know. So we're waiting
Yeah.
outside. Every member of Screeching Weasel comes out, talks to us. We're chatting with people. No Ben Weasel. Yo, the kid goes, oh, I'm going to go find Ben Weasel. Let me see if I can find him, because we knew a guy. He's not coming out yet. And then all of a sudden we see a flash, like the fucking Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch come running by. Ben Weasel doesn't want shit to do with anybody, because maybe he's anxious, because maybe he's tired. Doesn't matter. We're going to get him. 3D goes, get him. And we go running around the bus. We're trying to shut the door of the bus, and 3D goes, hey, 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 Ben, yo, can you sign this guy's leather jacket? And Ben goes, yeah, okay. So I step up into the bus, right? And I open up my lapel, and he signs it. I'm face to face with Ben Weasel, this guy who I've put in the lyrics of my songs, this guy who I've had a connection to forever. And I didn't even think. He looks at my jacket, and I have a button that the Jason sold for a while that said, I support Ben Weasel and every punch he threw. And
Oh.
he looks at it and he goes, what does that say? And I said, oh, it says I support Ben Weasel and every punch he threw. And he made this noise like this. And I said, all right, Ben, thanks. And I got out. I don't know how to interpret that noise. I don't know if he was disappointed or if he was just confused, but
Yeah.
he signed it. But it's one of those things where we have connections to people deep down that
Mm-hmm.
we'll never know. And I think it's interesting, as artists who inevitably have fans. I'm uncomfortable with that term. I don't like to say Jason's fans because that's weird to me.
Yeah, yeah.
But we do. We have fans, you have fans, and when we meet people, it's always good to keep that in mind. Luckily, with the Jasons, what our fans want most of the time is for me to tell them that I fucked their mom and to go to hell or something. So we keep that in, you know?
I love it. I love it. Well, let me tell you that story. I can picture myself experiencing something like that, and it would leave me with a very unsatisfied feeling. And I'm sure that's kind of how it left you because it's like an unresolved thing. And dude, Ben Weasel for me, to speak to your point about having a connection that you know it's meaningful, but it's like I had met him, you know, I was having dreams about him. I had dreams where it was like I was showing him songs on my demo tape, like check it out, and like having these like almost like fantasy dreams where I was interacting with him on like a kind of a personal level,
Yeah.
which really, you know, says something about you know how meaningful he was as a person, specifically a songwriter, or specifically a punk rocker who did a lot of stuff himself, who forged his own path and supported the scene in his own way. So like, yeah, I can fully relate to that. I got and I had the only interactions I'd had with him were all online things, like through the Weasel Acres message board and stuff like that, and little things here and there, but nothing super significant. But I got to interview him recently, and having that interview with him, it was great, man. It was like you you know you're a very socially intuitive guy, so like you pick up on people's mannerisms pretty quickly, you pick up on people's personalities, and once you are engaged in a conversation that's really meant to happen, that's when it feels right. And like I had that with him, you know, and I feel like you should have him on the show because you're sincerely, you know, interested in meaningful conversations about music and songwriting and stuff. And he's down for that. And he'll talk your ear off, man, because, you know, he's a super articulate guy and he just goes and goes and goes and goes. And you kind of have to wait until the point of like interjection is there. But
Yeah.
I really am thankful that I got to speak to him like that. And yeah, who knows if I'll have that chance with other heroes of mine like Fat Mike. But I feel like we've both befriended a lot of our heroes in this scene anyway. So I got to be thankful for like Cody and like Jughead and Dr. Frank and all these people who were like now a part of my life legitimately as friends who, you know, it was the same deal. But yeah, for sure it's crazy, and you can drive yourself crazy thinking about it too much.
Right, right. Yeah. And you know, like I think that's the thing too. Like it is weird because in punk rock we start to realize before you're and that goes it really goes back to kind of what you were talking about when people were saying like, oh, you're just upset because you're not as famous or blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That's the only and the same perspective of like, what are you going to do now that somebody criticized your art? Whatever will you do? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
the only kind of the perspective that you can have when you're not an artist, when you're not a musician, because once you've done it, you realize number one, that the top level of punk rock is still very, very low. It's like, if only we had known that all we need to do is reach up just above our head and we're already at the stratosphere. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the people in our genre are accessible. Most of the people in our genre, especially in 2021, I mean, maybe in the 90s, those connections were a lot higher with big record label money and stuff. But like
Yeah.
when we went and you know recorded our little 10-inch record with Joe Queer, like that really broadened my horizons, opened my mind to the fact that like I said, punk rock is dying and it's almost became an equalizer of all bands because we are literally all just some of us trying to do it for a living, some of us trying to just do it on the side, but we are all like experiencing like, wow, this is not something that's super lucrative, like
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I think that equalized a lot of us too, and now this pandemic has certainly equalized bands because I'm seeing bands fold because they were right at that level where it's like we can't do it full time, we can't really, you know, do it full time, and we're kind of getting there, and now there's no shows, and it's punk rock has just changed so much. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, so yeah, and I'm grateful for that too, the internet. And like, you know, for me, my heroes, people like Phil McCracken, people like the Huntingtons, like um it's cool that we've been able to like reach out and meet those people and work with those people. And and you're right, probably context does matter in a context does matter in how you approach someone and talk with someone. I just hope that I stick to that level where I remember that,
Mhm.
if somebody ever wants to talk to me, but normally, like I said, luckily it's built in that I can just tell someone to fuck off, and that's part of my gimmick. They like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I think it's like context definitely matters, and the energy that you bring to the conversation. If you're going to initiate a conversation, if you're all hyped up and like if you have some agenda, it's going to come across. Like that's something I've realized over time is the subtleties of your. It may sound kind of hippy dippy, but the energy that you bring to the interaction really makes a difference because your intentions are going to be clearly communicated whether you speak them or not. And if you're too excited or you do something that puts someone on the defensive, then you're already in an awkward place. But luckily, like through this, through Zoom and stuff, like there's a lot of ways that we can legitimately reach out to people. We just have to be a little careful about it and courteous so that we're not like trying to, the worst thing. I've listened to a lot of interviews, a lot of podcasts and stuff, especially music stuff, and the most disappointing thing is when you're about to watch an interview with someone that you're stoked on, and then you realize that like the interviewer is just like kind of all about their thing. Like and share and comment, and, yeah, me, check me out, and then like all the correct questions will relate back to me, and I'm like, come on, man, like, or if they're just overly self-conscious to the point where like every question has to have some kind of weird little joke and apology slash risque remark. Are you reacting to me? Shit like that. Like, come on, man, just be real, because that's the biggest pleasure I get out of communicating with like-minded people is to like give respect and acknowledgement to them and say like I value you because you're into the same weird shit that I'm into. Like we have something, and you can have that with someone who's at a higher level than you. You just have to approach them as a human being and treat them as a human being.
yeah, exactly. And we've all seen those interviews too, where you get the sense that people are playing it safe because they go into it with such a reverence or a hero worship that they want to upset somebody. Like I've seen a lot of interviews with Ben Weasel where I left feeling unfulfilled because they didn't go to any place that I wanted to see them go. It was just kind of like, just tell me about your new stuff, okay? And My Brain Hurts was great. Okay,
Yeah.
if I talk to Ben Weasel or if I talk to anybody, I want to try to find out something about who they are as a person, more so
Mhm.
about their artwork and like what goes on behind the scenes, like
Mhm.
that's why when I started doing this, I was like, I just want to talk to people that are in theatrical gimmick bands. Yeah, and like I said at the beginning, uh, I don't know that Grim Deeds is as much of a gimmick band as some of the other gimmick bands I've talked with, but you have an image and you have a persona that is very thin. It's like a very thin persona where there's if you just look hard enough, you can see the person behind it and stuff.
Yeah.
But um, I as far as like the differences of doing something like that, performing something like that, how do you think people treat you differently? Because I've had that discussion with a lot of people, like as
Mhm.
Grim Deeds, when you are Grim Deeds and playing
Oh,
live
yeah.
or all that stuff. What's that like?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I haven't even played that many live shows to the point where I've really solidified the character. So there's been some shows where I really laid on thick and I talk like this and I'm going to play you some fucking punk rock. Fuck it. Okay. We're going to play it right now. And then people think that's funny. Then there's other times where I'm just talking like I'm talking to you now, and so I haven't really figured that out, but there's definitely like a brand, this is my brand. And I didn't really set out to do that, but it felt right. And once I started doing it, I realized I could kind of run with it. And there is some importance to that because people need to have imagery to associate with. I mean, you guys do it beautifully, like there's no mistaking the Jasons.
Yeah.
So you got to have something that's, I think, semi gimmicky if you're doing something like what I'm doing. Because if I had just kept it all singer songwritery, I think it would have come across as too lame. I think you got to add a little element of humor and shtick to make it truly entertaining. And when people go to a show, they love stuff like that, man. So, and it's fun, you know, like why make it so serious? But I've done things where people don't really know what to expect. I think maybe by now people do know that I'm kind of a normal dude, but like there's been some question, I guess, in the past about like, you know, what's going to happen in this interaction with Grim Deeds, like, ooh, you know, like because if you read the press, you know, releases before I would do an album, we always play it up, you know, as much as possible. Like the satanic bowels of hell will now unleash another Grim Deeds album, and you know, we really take it to that extreme level. So I can see why people would question, like, well, wait a minute, like, what's this dude really about? But you don't have to dig too far, and that's what I like because I've always been a digger. I always want to dig into whatever stuff I'm into. So if people just even search my name, they're not going to have to click too many links to get to something where it's like, oh yeah, he's just a normal weird dude, you know. So you know, it's I just am thankful. I'm thankful that people like it, I guess, you know, because
It's
it's a big part of why I keep doing it.
Yeah, and I think when you create something like that, I've learned for sure, like I always think like people will be as big of a fan as you let them be, and it's
Mm-hmm.
easier for someone to be a big fan of a band when they're not just a normal human being. You become like Mickey Mouse at Disneyland, and people feel like they can interact with you differently. And
Mm-hmm.
like we've talked to when I was talking to Michael J. Wolf from Wolfface, like we were talking about how at least for us both we experience live, like people believe they can touch you and grab
Oh,
you. It's like something about putting something on, putting that wall between the real person, it helps people forget,
yeah.
and that might be some of the strengths of writing songs that have such kind of like heavy truths in them, but from behind that mask that I think people can digest it better maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and when I play shows with a band, one of the things I do is, I mean, I as much from the hardcore music scene as I am from the punk and metal scene. So hardcore frontmen are very important because they really connect with the audience and they really interact with the audience. They jump in the crowd and they get down in the pit and they're singing in the faces of people. And I try to do that with Grim Deeds, even though it's like pop punk music. It's funny. It's like, yeah, you know. So I try to get into the people's comfort bubbles and like get my face in there and just to let them know, like, here I am, like I'm part of this, you're part of this, and people generally seem to take to it because I don't want to come across in a threatening way, but I want to come across in a way where it's like, yeah, like I'm an open, you know, book basically. Like you can scribble on the pages too if you want. There's been times like when I got to play in Japan in 2015 and I jumped into the crowd and was like going around and singing in people's faces and stuff. And the reactions and the smiles on their faces, I could tell there was something to that because, you know, even culturally, like to do something like that that's so silly and brash in a way, it's kind of a delight, you know, because I was obviously like I didn't mean any harm, but there was something like energizing about it. Like a couple people, like I grabbed them, you know, by their shirt and I was like singing in their face and stuff, and I could see their faces just light up, like yes, like it was like giving them permission to fucking get stoked. And here, I mean, in America, people are always showing their ass anyway, so it's kind of like, you know, ho hum. But that memory comes to mind because when I played there, I could sense that even the existence of a Grim Deeds character is kind of like giving them permission to let loose in a way that is freeing and it's cool. That's, I think rock and roll kind of serves that purpose for a lot of people, you know, loosening up and just letting it all hang out.
Yeah, I went once to I went to see this band Rumpelstiltskin Grinder. I don't know if you know this band.
I know them.
I'm a huge fan of Rumpelstiltskin Grinder, and I went to see them. I think it was their first tour that they did, and like I was standing in the crowd. There were like maybe like 30 people, and we were just chilling, watching Rumpelstiltskin Grinder. It was great, and one of them jumped down off the stage and just bumped into me, like rammed into me, and it gave me that same kind of charge where I was like, I just went from like, fuck yeah, this is great, to like I was ready to fucking destroy. It was like they transferred that energy, and it was like I had been in I fucking mosh pit before. But I had never felt the transfer from like like I said, when you're not in a band necessarily, or you don't do this, like we imagine things differently as non-musicians. Like the stage is like it's a separate place. And I mean, I don't know how many people have asked us, the Jasons, like, well, oh yeah, like music is just that's your job, right? That's all you do. And it's like
Yeah,
it
right.
seems absurd, but you're like, oh well, people don't realize what it is, So I think probably for those people, like fucking you, grim deeds came down from the fucking mountain.
Yeah, yeah. That's a thing to talk about. I mean, having to balance your life with your, I guess we could call this a hobby. I don't know, the passion that we have to do this and keep doing it. It's like that's one thing that you know I don't know if people realize how much of a struggle it is to create and to keep doing it because so many factors in life work against you in terms of monopolizing your time. That it's a wonder that I can still produce stuff the way I do it. But I'm still, I mean, if you're determined to do it, you're going to do it. You're going to find a way. And I'm still doing it because I love it. It's not because I'm like I've got an axe to grind or I'm not doing it resentfully. I'm still doing it because I enjoy it. But you do have to be very efficient with your time. Yeah, you
Yeah,
just have to like, man, you know, you
that's
have to find what works for you, basically.
yeah, that's the thing too, like because I mean, I don't know that any of us would have chosen, like you can even go all the way up the ranks, I think. Like I don't know that any of us, especially now, would have chosen to do this if it were for the money, because it's never ever going to be about that. Even for the Jasons, like we've been like uh, pretty like we've always said, like as much as people might see us doing a lot of stuff, like every ounce of everything we make over keeping the band alive goes back into the band, because it ends up becoming just a machine, whether it's time, whether it's money. You're just always trying to keep it going forward, to the point where sometimes you have to pull your head up above water for a few minutes and just like fucking breathe and figure out, like, okay, whoa, like I need to take a break and do this or that here.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife, she has a law background. So whenever I would make money with music, she's always like kind of like eyeing it, making sure that like there's no tax implications for what I do, is like
Oh,
what I have to report. And I've gotten to the level where like I had to bring some stuff to the accountant this time and be like, okay, well, here's some income that I have going on the side that's not very much, but it's like I just want to show you just in case I need to report on it and stuff. And he was kind of looking at like, what the fuck is this? And then he's like, well, it's if it's not something that you anticipate growing a lot incrementally over time, then you're probably fine, which shows I'm not like killing it or anything. But it is, another thing that you have to consider. And I think it does pay to be mindful about your economics as an artist, because you don't want to burn out because you don't have any resources to keep yourself inspired, and you know you want to develop it as you guys have done and further it as much as you can. So you do have to develop some discipline. Like I kind of treat grim deeds and my music in general as a second job, even though it's not really like a paid job. I try to approach it with that same professional mindset, and it's
yeah,
helpful.
we've come to that realization too, like, and I don't know what it is, but like post, like being locked in, for this past year has like has kind of made me feel, I've started, like I didn't go into this pandemic with an axe to grind, so to speak, but I feel like I'm coming out of it with one, because the more I'm separated from live shows, not just playing but going and seeing, the more I start to get like this agitated feeling that when it comes back, at least with whatever small amount of influence the Jasons have going forward and playing shows, I keep saying to like my bandmates, like, no more fucking $5 punk shows. Like, we got to start expecting promoters to do what they are supposed to do and like do their job. And like, I was echoing that, or I was saying that to one of my bandmates the other day, and then today in preparation for our like discussion, I was just listening to Grim Deeds, and I went to Ballad of the Opening Band,
Yeah.
um, and like my favorite song will always be Ego Death. I love that song, but Ballad of the Opening Band is like to me the new version of punk rock explained for the current times. And
Yeah.
in that song, you mentioned something that like it's like we've played our set over and over the day before, and we sold tickets, and we did this. And you mentioned like we played to nobody, and then we got paid in booze, but then the next day we totally feel used. And we've all experienced that, and I really have this desire that like that shouldn't be how it is. And the thing that you addressed was kind of like a club can put a $5 punk show. Hey, it's only $5. So it brings everybody in from the street who doesn't care about the music. They spend all their money at the bar. And then you end up going like, well, there was like five bands that played, and we played for $1 each per person, and I just feel like it's such a huge problem. And I think coming out, I want to eradicate that. I don't have the power to, but I'm going to do everything I can with our shows. Like, I just think we've got to stop doing that because I miss music so much. Just seeing it, that I've realized it's not like the punk rock fans or the concert goers that don't want to pay. It's the clubs that don't want to charge because they risk not having the random guy wander in from the street.
Yeah. Well, I think as an artist, you have to hold yourself up to a certain level of legitimacy in order to be taken seriously. Like designers and visual artists have this problem all the time. Like, oh, hey, draw the artwork for my album, and like, it's free promotion for you, so I don't have to pay you, right? Stuff like that. It's like, no, you should pay me because this is what I do for a living. As a musician and what we do, we have to do something similar. Like we have to demand a certain level of acknowledgement, and even whether you've earned it or not doesn't really matter. You have to have that mindset of like, this is serious, take it seriously. Otherwise, we're not going to have an agreement. We can't. Like, I'm not going to pay to play anymore, man. Fuck that. And when it comes to shows, like I'm pretty selective, very selective as far as like whether it's going to be worth it for me to do it or not. Maybe not necessarily as in terms of what you're talking about, like just more of like, am I going to have fun? But if I played a $5 punk show where everybody got paid $1 and like five bands and mostly people weren't even there for the show, that doesn't sound like fun to me either. But if I can at least get the right people to go to the show and have that sense of community, that's a good start. But making it official, I think, is important. And like I've always, in my dealings with people I've collaborated with, artists, labels, like everybody's going to get paid. Like I insist. Like don't say like, oh, you don't have to pay me anything. Like I'm going to pay you something. Like I oftentimes will pay more than what like people will ask. Like Stephen Franks is an artist, really talented guy. He's done cover art for a lot of good bands. I've used his art many times. He's such a humble dude. But sometimes I had to like just say like, all right, Stephen, I'm sending you money. Like, please accept this payment to your PayPal because I know he's not going to ask otherwise, and he should because he's worth it. You're worth it, Stephen.
No, that's really important. I agree because like we've done the same thing from the beginning. Like when we were talking about working with people, and like I always told Jason 3D, I was like, we're going to be that band that pays up front, that pays extra, because A, people are worth it, and B, like what I've experienced is the guy who's, okay, yeah, man, I'll do it for free, no problem. You also get put on the low totem pole end of the like, it's free, I can do that later. And like, you know, I I think it's worthwhile to be the band, like if you're starting out, even like to be the band where it's like, these guys pay every time. These guys are good customers. Like, I want to make sure and get their stuff done. And then your reputation gets out with other people where they're like, oh yeah, man, these guys are good, customers. Or because we do that with our recording studio. And we've done
Mm-hmm.
it so many times with the guy that we record with, John Stoker at Razor Blade Recordings, that now if it's like, hey man, I'm gonna have to go to the band fund, he's like, yo, you guys have always paid me, no, I know you're good for it, just So when you start to build that sort of reputation for your band, I think that's important too. And the same thing, like we've all probably experienced, like, hey, we booked an out of town band, so all the local bands get together and go, yo, let's make sure their guarantee is what it needs to be so they can get home. Like my thought going forward is, you know what, if we would start pushing up those, like, hey, the modern punk show is $10 now. The opening bands wouldn't have to take from their merch box and give to those touring guys. And it should never be like, I just feel like people, like the value of music's been devalued a lot because we've had so much of it, you know.
Mm.
And I don't think it's due to streaming. I don't think it's due to any of that stuff. I think it's due to the fact that we've just had so much. It's like, you know, I can go to a show anytime, but now we haven't, you know.
Yeah. Well, who pays for porn anymore? You know, nobody. So it's similar. It's like, oh well. I mean, I personally, I still buy music sometimes, but kind of in like a weirder sort of niche collector sort of way. You know, I'm not like as good about like, oh, my friend just put out something, I'm going to immediately go buy it. But I try to support it how I can. You know, like I think it's important to take care of each other and to promote what everyone's doing. And I have my little platform for doing that, you know, with sharing and stuff, or doing my blog, interviewing people and things like that. But you do have to show that you care, you know, and you have to make it not just about yourself. That's what I really feel is true, and what I value about the punk community is that it can be that. And I think the pop punk scene's gotten so much better over the years. I've felt way more included, you know, as years have gone on, and met so many nice people, so many great talented musicians and labels. And now it's cool because even like some of the old guard uh, people that are, you know, maybe I wouldn't have fit in so well back in like 2000, like they're cool now. You know, everybody's getting older, and really this whole punk rock thing is serving the 30 and 40 somethings the most, I think, you know,
Yeah.
like as we said. So who knows if it'll even be a relevant thing by the time my son's a teenager, but I think it's going to stick around as long as people love it. So we just got to find a way to pass that love on somehow to the next generation.
Yeah, I think it's important. I don't know what the code is and how we break it, but I do think it's important. Yo, and I was thinking, like, as we were talking, I mentioned streaming, and I was going to ask you because when I made the parallel uh between Grim Deeds and being a black metal band, I think about a lot of my favorite black metal bands. I noticed that Grim Deeds is not on Spotify. It's not so. Is that like your kind of stance against that? Like, what's your reason that you're, because you have a lot of records, and
Yeah, yeah, it's great. That's a great question.
and the place to find them, by the way, for people listening, obviously, is there's a band camp where you can almost go and listen to everything, and you've got merch up there. But yeah, what's, because we struggled with that for a while, quite a while.
There came a turning point where I felt like suddenly there was this expectation that you had to have things on Spotify and you had to have things in a more official format, you know, so people could listen to it on Amazon and stuff like that. And there's a few things that I've released that are available on that. And I experimented with it for the first time when I did the Gungans project. I said, well, maybe I'll throw this on Spotify and see what happens. And it hasn't been worth it, man. I just got a renewal notice, $45 for another year of like people getting to listen to it, I guess, but it's not like I'm seeing any returns off that $45. Whereas with Bandcamp, enough people know about it, you know, 200 some followers that know when something's going to come out, and the money comes in, you know, a dollar here, a dollar there, $7 here, $7 there. And sometimes people do surprise me and like buy a whole bunch of shit. So I feel like my reasons for not going the streaming route is that, one, I'm a little too lazy to try to keep up with so many multiple platforms at the same time. Bandcamp's always been super efficient and user friendly and community friendly for me. And honestly, I think that it's cool to have enough reach where your name is out there. And if people want to go find it, they can easily find it. Because if you type in Grim Deeds in Google, everything comes up. You know, it's not super obscure to the point where you're going to have trouble listening to it. And you know, I have other friends who are kind of on a different path of like doing radio and doing streaming and trying to be a little more savvy and professional with it, which is cool, and I totally respect it. I don't really know if I have the energy to do that. And I've always preferred lurking in the underground. Like I'd rather be a cult thing overall, I think. And I've kind of reached that goal. So I don't really feel like I need to push in the same way. Like the way that I'm trying to push now is just more creative push to do new and weirder stuff and maybe grow the label a little bit more or do more outreach like through the interviews and things like that. But yeah, I think like my motivation is easily satisfied using the formats that I've been using the whole time.
It's definitely, it was a struggle for us for a long time, and I've done the same thing, like not with the Jasons, but with other stuff. I did like a little like experiment, because like yeah, that renewal fee, especially like if I ever had any advice to give a brand new band, it would be if you put your shit streaming, don't fuck with TuneCore. I don't know if that's who you went with.
That's what I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Because for TuneCore, for one record, it's $40 a year. Whereas
Mhm.
I found out later after we had put 5 records up there that at like someone like I think it's DistroKid, it's $40 a year for all of your releases, as much as you want, blah 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 blah. And but I didn't know that, so I'm getting crushed,
Mhm.
by fucking TuneCore. Hey, your first record. Hey, remember that audio commentary track you did? Yeah, yeah, you got to pay for that too. And like, so I I migrated everything over. There's only 2 records left on TuneCore, and I told them, like, quit billing me because I'm moving my shit. And
Yeah.
but like, so I was struggling with that for a while, and I certainly think like I mean, we're talking about this on Bandcamp Friday, and Bandcamp is literally the only like streaming platform that gives a shit. Like when COVID happened, um, TuneCore had this thing where they were like, "Yo, we're trying to help struggling artists, and we want to give you back," And I applied for it for the Jasons, and I said like, I sent in all the paperwork, and we got denied. So it's like, whereas Bandcamp's like, fuck it, we're helping everybody. Like, here you go. So I respect that certainly, but like the struggle was always like I felt the same way. I was like, man, I don't want people to be able to get our shit so easy, then they won't buy anything. And physical, and I'm a physical media guy. I'm surrounded by fucking records. I'm a physical media guy.
Yeah.
But we did find out, and I think it's the beauty of punk rock as a small genre, just like metal, just like all that stuff. Like, the dudes in our genre tend to be collectors and archaeologists, where they dig and they want to own shit. And we didn't see a drop off in our merch sales when we put it up live. But the thing that really changed me forever was I went to see Chuck D from Public Enemy, and me, he told the audience, he said it numerous times. He said, if your music's not on the internet for people to find somewhere, you're behind the fucking times. Because before that, we didn't do shit. We had nothing. And I was like, well, if Chuck D says it's right, it must be right. And we did it. And, for us too, though, like we tour and we play a lot of shows. So it's easy for us to be like, yo, here's our link. Go check it out, So, but, I definitely see the difference. I tried with a release I did with something else where I put it on Bandcamp like a few weeks exclusively and then later uploaded it. And I saw a really it was kind of nice. There was that big initial purchase, and then the people that stream it later. But I've sort of been playing with that. I think
Mhm.
there's got to be a Da Vinci Code in there somewhere where everything can work in harmony. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's tricky to try and figure, and you can spend all your time thinking about all that stuff. One thing I like about Bandcamp is when you go to their page, they have reviews and they have interviews and they have stuff that's like focused on the community. Like sometimes they have awesome stuff like related to metal, like top 10 dissonant death metal bands or the origins of dissonant death metal, starting with Death, the band. And like I was like, I want to read this, So I can get behind a site that is also acting like a almost like a online magazine featuring artists and celebrating artists and bringing my attention to artists. Like that's awesome. Like I don't know if the other streaming sites can say that they're doing that, you know.
Yeah, no, I just think like especially now, like it's there are ways to like manipulate it and ways to use it, and I don't know what the code is because I don't come from that specific generation. We're going taxing around Castle Deeds right now. Look at this.
Yeah, dude. I'm struggling to hold in my urine right now. I've had to go for a long time.
Yo, please tell me you're gonna pee on camera. We'll get our OnlyFans version of the Grim Deeds interview going. One of the weirdest feelings I ever got was when I was in a club. We were getting ready to play, and I was shitting, but my hair goes out through my mask, and so I was in all my leather and my bullet belt, and I'm just sitting in my mask and my leather jacket shitting, and I was like, man, this is fucking weird. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you just never thought about that kind of thing having to be an issue. What does Jason do when he shits? What does Deeds have to do when he takes a piss? I don't know, you know.
Well, whenever I play a show in a club where I put on makeup, I mean, I'm always putting it on in some tiny bathroom that's like filthy with graffiti and crap everywhere. And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's weird, man. It's a weird, like, you know, I don't want to bum people out who are in there to wash their hands or go to the bathroom or whatever. There's some big dude like putting on face makeup, staining the sink with like black face paint and stuff. And that's yeah, that's part of the experience.
Not long ago, well, before before the lockdown and stuff, Jason Hollywood and I decided we were in some city. I don't even remember. It was like somewhere in Ohio, but right down the road from the club, there was a porno store, and we always check that stuff out on like record stores, porno shops. We're gonna stop and check it out just because why not, you know? But it was like right before the show, and I said, "Yo, Hollywood, let's go like check out this porno store down the street." And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." So we took off our masks because we're not trying to let them think we're robbing the place.
Right.
But we had all of our like leather and our bullets, and and he wears like some bondagey stuff. And we were just in there, looking at stuff. And I looked over at him perusing this section, and I all of a sudden realized that Jason Hollywood and myself were now a leather daddy couple shopping in a porno store. And I was like, I didn't really even think that went through,
That's funny, man. Yeah, that's one of the fun things about touring, like road adventures with like
God, yeah.
adult video arcades and stuff like that. It's funny, man. That stuff is everywhere. That's like the American heartland right there.
Yeah, and if you want to see some interesting people, man, go to the porn store, because we live in an age when people don't have to go anymore, but there are some guys and ladies that still do, So
yeah, it is funny. It's like
it's always interesting, So hey, as we before we go, you do have your guitar there. Do you want to play something? Would you play I've never had anybody play anything live.
Sure. It'll just be off the cuff, like
yeah.
I've been writing some stuff and I've been recording as always, but I've been doing weirder stuff. Like I just finished a song today that was like total like trying to be DRI, like skate thrash punk kind of song. Yeah. It turned out cool, but I don't know. Let me see. I'll play Ego Death because that's the song you like.
Please do, yeah.
All right. Sick and tired of my own bullshit, entitled and unappreciated. Try to see outside my own head. In my bubble of narcissism, can't keep living like an asshole. I've at least got to try. If you're wondering the reasons, then I'll tell you why. It wasn't ego death. It wasn't ego death. And I'm fine. And I'm fine. And I'm fine. In my life there are precious few, understanding and appreciated, but so many are overdue. For get a perspective. Does the world even matter? Is there reason to try? If you're wondering the reasons, then I'll tell you why. It wasn't ego death. It wasn't ego death. It wasn't ego death. And I find, and I find, and I find.
Yo, thank you very much.
That was cool. I always kind of flounder when I'm playing acoustic and singing. Like I've never had a performance where it's just me and an acoustic guitar where I don't fuck up like every other song. But I've learned to just keep going and not be like, ooh, and draw attention to it. So that wasn't too bad though.
That's a terrifying for me. Alone with an acoustic guitar is a terrifying scenario, and whenever I've been asked, I agree because I know that it's good for me to feel that crazy uncomfortable. Yeah.
The first show I ever did as Grim Deeds, it was with no makeup. It was an acoustic show in Oakland, and Dr. Frank was there, and I was friends with him at the time, but I didn't know him as well as I know him now. And he was watching me perform, and it was my first ever playing a guitar live and like that in front of people, and it was fucking nerve-wracking. And I remember the very first song I went into, I like leaned in too far to the mic and like sang really loud and like had feedback and played the wrong chord and had to start over again. So, but I got through.
For you though, that's what you need to. I mean, that is the shit that builds somebody who has confidence playing on stage and in front of people. I swear to God, like
yeah, it's true.
I just wasn't like today. I posted about when we first started. Our drummer quit the night before like our second show ever, and me and 3D had to sit down and decide like, okay, are we going to drive all the way 10 hours to this show to eat shit acoustically in front of people? And we did it and we recorded it, and it's up on our Bandcamp. It's called He Quit the Fucking Band, the Jason's Live, and it's legitimately the worst show we ever played. 3D couldn't get his guitar in tune, but I always left it up because it was like, if you listen, you can hear the sounds of ego death 100% in that show. But I think that's the stuff that makes us better musicians,
Yeah, you just got to go for it and do your best to prepare. Don't just say fuck it, but like you are gonna fuck up sometimes, and that's okay. And the more you do it, the better you get, and the more comfortable you get. I mean, if you look at how NoFX plays, like they're a shining example of like dudes who can play and who don't give a shit. And they do fuck up sometimes, but they're just so witty and so good at playing it off that like no one's gonna heckle them for it.
No, they built it into their narrative. Yeah, we're shitty.
Mm-hmm.
I heard they suck live. There you go.
Yeah, and that's a little bit about that's kind of my thing too, because I'm not a seasoned musician. I'm a songwriter, but yeah, I mean my chops are questionable at best. So you'll see that in the live performance.
Oh, the same for us as well. And I think I feel like we have a million things in common in that respect.
Yeah.
And that's why I admire you as an artist. That's why I like talking to you as a person, and why I just thought it would be interesting to talk to you, because really I'm at the point, man, where like I'm outside of the punk rock genre a lot with my interests, but your stuff has always kept me, like even down to your the archives. Like you did a spoken word record, and I loved that so much because I even that to that degree, like it's just another peek behind like the person behind Grim Deeds. So I hope you do another one of those, actually, because
thanks, man. I have some stories. I've written them down and like on a notepad, like for volume 2. I just want to make sure they really resonate, because you have to be selective, and some of that stuff, like I have some stories to tell that they're gnarly, like it would be hard to have it out there knowing that like my family might hear it and get bummed out, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just got to do it anyway. So we'll see. But I have plans to do another spoken word, just more stories about my life and things that led to me becoming grim deeds, I guess.
Yo, what's your favorite? Like, what's the record you're most proud of? You've done so many. Do you have one that stands out?
Great question, man. Tell you what, since we're on Zoom, I'll go and get my special little box where I keep all my albums. So
Oh yeah.
sometimes bring them out and take a photo for posterity. But I was thinking about this the other day. The very first one I did is probably still one of the best, just because the way it came out. The whole concept of the album was to do pop punk, but just make it very simple and try to make the lyrics really shine. And I think that one, you know, it definitely established the core of what I wanted to do in the long term too. So let's see, I got my archives right here. So I'm gonna pick one that I like personally a lot, which is this one, Rare, which has the David Huggins is the dude who did the artwork. It wasn't for me. This is a painting that already existed, but he's like this crazy guy who's actually really sincere and down to earth. But the reason I say that is he's the subject of a documentary film called Love and Saucers, which explores his stories about alien abduction. And he's has like shitloads of experiences that he alleges, happened and were the inspiration for all these paintings. And he's painted hundreds of scenes of like experiences and meeting extraterrestrials and stuff. So I'm really proud that I got to use his art for that one. But this one has Ego Death on it. So, it's got a lot of my better songs, and it has Dear David Jones, which Cody sings on that one. So I'm proud of that one. So I think this one, the other thing about this one, this is only 12 songs. Leading up to this, I had a lot of albums that had like 15, 16, 18, 20. And then this is like a double album, actually. This has 31 songs on it. But this one really felt like an album, like everything came together. You know what I mean? And since that album, there have been a few examples of that here and there, but there's been a lot of stuff like this album, for example, was kind of like an EP with just some extra shit that I threw on there. And then I've got like, this is a split, and then this is an EP. And then, so stuff that I've done since then hasn't felt as whole as that album did. And I like it when I can come up with like an album that's like a beginning to end experience and everything's kind of cohesive on some level. So that's one of my goals, is to get back to doing that. And then otherwise, I end up in like side project territory where I've got like the Gungans or this project was cool, Dumburger stuff.
Yeah.
I'll tell
you what, Jason Hell loves the fucking Gungans, and Jason Hollywood is a fan of Jar Jar Binks, so it just added fuel to his fire of being a Jar Jar Binks fan, which drives me crazy. But I also enjoy the Gungans myself.
But, yeah, I'll probably keep doing it. This last one that I did, I went off the path a little bit, because the first two were obviously very just like kitschy, fun, like very gimmicky in the sense that I was just writing about nerdy pop punk stuff the whole time. And then of course the Jar Jar stuff is like the gimmick. But this one is basically a Grim Deeds album disguised as a Gungans album, because all the songs are a little bit moodier and the lyrics are a little bit more real. And I don't know if people liked it or not, but I do plan to do more of that stuff, because there's an endless array of Lookout album covers to parody with Jar Jar Binks.
Of course, I think you having that box, like we were talking about physical media and stuff. Oh my God, look at that.
that's the full. This doesn't include metal stuff, so like Cloven Altar and stuff like that's in a different box. But this is all my Grim Deeds and Gungans like related stuff.
That shows to me like there is something like powerful and tangible that you can't capture digitally, because I have a similar thing, like where there's something about being able to take and see all of your stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
it solidifies the fact that you've accomplished something on those days when like you know we've like the money's not sitting there showing you, hey, look how much money you made. And sometimes the there's not some, you know, article being written about your band that, oh, you're so great, but it's not about that. What it's about is like, and I'll show you mine while we're
Yeah,
sharing.
I gotta check it out. Yeah, I want to see your archives, dude.
Mine's a little less it's a little less organized, but I have a shelf. Let's see if I can fucking capture it. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, so
Yeah,
we've got King Diamond, you know, and the vinyl stuff, and then it goes down to CDs. But I did the same thing, and then I allowed myself to put up.
yeah, you got them on the wall.
I
Hangers.
it took me a while to feel okay with putting up Jason's related stuff, because I didn't want to be the dude who had a room full of ego shit that where I was
Right.
like, I'm so great. And that wasn't about it. But I told 3D, I was like, I finally feel like it's all right to be proud of our fucking work. And
It's important to you, man.
seeing it all together does something, you know, and that's why whenever you post, occasionally you'll post photos of your whole discography together. And like, it's, it's proof positive that like, it's proof that like you're doing something that's out there that will be out there. And it's just, I don't know, there's something amazing about getting physical media together and being able to hold it and hold the fruits of your work, you know.
Yeah, man. For me, it's almost like merit badges for a Boy Scout. It's like you wear it with pride. It's like, you know, I've passed these tests. Check it out. Here's a cool thing. You ever seen this? This is let's see if you can see it. It's a skateboard deck with Ryan Singer's art with like
Oh my god.
Jar Jar and Grim Deeds. It's from one of the albums called Swing.
Wow.
I got that made. That's pretty rad. You did an action figure, right? A Jason V action figure.
Yeah, there've been a couple that we did. 3D made a big set, and then we had some like small ones. 3D Jason 3D made me a pretty cool. I'll fucking hear out while we're playing show and tell. I might as well show.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure people will enjoy seeing the weird shit that we have collected. But this is a
Yeah.
Jason 3D original that he gave me.
Oh, nice.
Cool little guy there, but yeah, that's like that kind of stuff, especially coming from the marketing level and the place of being a Kiss fan. Like those are,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, okay, we made records. When's our comic book coming out? Okay, when's our fucking action figures? When's our Jason's casket coming out?
That's
So
the advantage of having like a gimmick. It's like you can do stuff like that.
exactly, yeah. You know, that's the so there's a Grim Deeds action figure. There's
Yeah.
a Jason V action figure, but I guarantee you, there's never been a Ben Weasel action figure. So, in that fucking respect, we are more legendary than Ben Weasel, or there's never been a Fat Mike one either. I'll bet. I don't know.
I mean, there's a cartoonish aspect about it. I mean, we're from the '80s, man. You know, we collected action figures and stuff. So it's just, I think it's also like an extension of that, like wanting to relive childhood stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in here. It's a little koozie. Some of it's like stuff that people made just for me as a gift too, which is cool and special. But this is where I keep all my like vinyl and magazines and various things that can't fit anywhere else. It's my little like Grim Deeds Lego figure that I made. Pretty cool. You can see that or not, but
yeah. Vinyl for me, well, there was like I don't know how long it took you to do a Grim Deeds vinyl, but like there were
wow.
years and years where I wanted to have my music on vinyl, and when it finally happened, it was like it felt like a major benchmark. You know, it didn't come easy for us by any means, and so when we finally did it, like it felt like a major benchmark. You know.
Well, I'm so lucky that I've been able to put out things on Out Loud because Matt, the way he runs his label is kind of perfect because it's very similar to the way I do Grim Deeds. Everything's very immediate. And when he started doing options for T-shirts and vinyl, he did it the exact same way I would have, which is like it's kind of like a made to order thing. And some people will say that's bullshit, but I'm happy. I'm happy with the vinyl that I have, and I think it's awesome. And it's kind of like it's a big ask because some of that stuff can be expensive for the fans or whatever to get, but I'll help people get it if they want. Like if they want it, I'll charge less for it and take the hit because it's just cool to have it. It's whatever you got to do to make it real, because I'm like you. I like to have things physical, and like you don't get like a virtual degree. Like they don't just like email you when you graduate college and say like, okay, you're done. Like there's like a thing that you hang on the wall, like you're proud of, and that's how I am with music too.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And like, I think there's like various levels of power. Like I don't believe in the afterlife or magic, but I think if there is any sort of magical power, it comes with creating something tangible. So it's like there's level one is you take something from up here in your brain and you speak it out into existence. Now it lives there. That
Yeah.
can be a song. Then you take that entity and you draw your fucking pentagram, you light your candles, you cut yourself and you create a record. And now there's something even more tangible. And like, what's the next level is maybe a live show. I don't know. To me, honestly, I think the power of a record is greater than the power of a live show because the record lives on and on and on forever, whereas a live show just lives in someone's memory. I don't know, but
Yeah.
in the black magic of creating music, I think with every format, the spell gets more powerful, and
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
vinyl is that,
Yeah. Well, that's the another key to the motivation, is just keep it going, keep adding new CDs, to the collection. And, there's no cutoff point. I mean, we can keep doing this as long as we're healthy enough to do it. So that's what I plan to do anyway.
Will there be Grim Deeds on laptop punk records, or will that be a totally separate thing, or how's that going to work with you and Out Loud?
Yeah, I've kind of kept it separate because I didn't really want it to be about me. Although I put out one of my own songs like right at the beginning of the label. I just called it Deeds instead of Grim Deeds, just to make it a little different. And actually, some people didn't even realize it was me. But I've kind of kept the laptop punk thing more as like a promoting others tool, whereas like for the Grim Deeds, I'll just keep it on my Bandcamp and just do the same thing I usually do with Matt. Um, but he sometimes puts the logo on there anyway. Like the last album I did, he put a little laptop punk logo, so that was cool.
That's
I
cool.
mean, it's nice to have it. I like that people are familiar with it, and the dude from the Labor Pains got it tattooed on his leg.
Was it Kyle? Kyle from the Labor Pains?
No, it was Dan.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kyle from the Labor Pains, I guess I'll break kayfabe here and say that Kyle from the Labor Pains, there was a time when a Jason in Hollywood couldn't make a show, and with 1 day's notice, Kyle from the Labor Pains learned our set and put a bag on his head and did a fucking great. He did better than me, so I love that guy. I love that dude.
yeah, they're all super like skilled and talented, and like I think they're great. So I was really stoked to put out. They did an EP, and I put it out. Yeah, and people downloaded it, and it was great. It was like a very successful little arrangement that we had, and I hope they'll do more.
Yeah,
I'm really proud of all the people out there. They're just doing it, and it's delightful to me when people who I've known for a while, who I know because they've either bought stuff for me or talked to me or whatever. Like when I know that they're working on stuff, I really like that because then I can get to hear it and give them my opinion and stuff and help nurture it. There's a guy that I've been in contact with for a long time, John Galvin. He's a fucking awesome dude, and he's recording right now, and like he's gotten to a point with his songwriting where I'm impressed, and he's gonna let me release something of his pretty soon. So
it's so crazy that you mentioned that because as you were talking about that, I was thinking about John Galvin and Kelsey Bad Grammar as his band.
Yep.
Like I was thinking about him because I've also been to where like I remember the days where I saw John Galvin before it was Kelsey Bad Grammar. It was a band called Broken Glass Factory,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I remember watching him like evolve and create his sound. And like just recently they released something and I went like, holy fuck. Like
Yeah.
this is like a whole different level of good now. Like it
Mhm.
really has evolved into something awesome. So it's crazy that you mentioned it because that's the band I was thinking about. Kelsey
Yep.
Banner, John Galvin.
Yeah, he just sent me some stuff that he's currently recording, and yeah, I'm gonna end up putting it out, and that makes me so proud to be able to do that, and know that you know he had some of the inspiration was from like interactions with people like us, people who were already doing songs that and gave him the idea like, hey, I can do this too, which obviously he's going to be
Yeah.
making some cool albums, and I'm stoked. Actually, some of his stuff reminds me a little bit of like After School Special and like old school, mutant pop sound. I'm really
Yeah.
into it.
He certainly also has a nice level. I think this is where I connect with his music on a nice little like layer of Matt Skiba in there somewhere.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's so crazy, I'm and I feel like he's kind of like a descendant of the Deeds method where like he can crank out songs, man, like
yeah,
cranks out so many songs and they're all catchy and they have all got good hooks and like I that's the kind of person that I've loved watching him create and just no fucking rules, no boundaries. Like I love it. So
yeah.
that's great, man. I'm looking forward to hearing the fruit of your collaboration on that with him. So
And there's got to be a Jason's Grim Deeds split at some point.
dude, I've
That's
always said that. Yeah. I mean it's inevitable. It's gonna happen. Yeah. Like,
yeah. We'll stay in touch about that. And I want it to be. I don't want to just give you some leftovers. I want to make it cool. So I'll keep it in mind.
if I had it my way, what we would do is join forces and write all the songs
Oh,
together
yeah,
to do something out like that. Because
that'd be cool.
whenever I approach doing a split, like I always try to figure out instead of how we can have two separate things, how we can make it one. Like we tried our best to do that with the Black Russians, where like
Yeah,
we were in contact the whole time. Like, all right, you guys wrote an anti-Jason song, so we're gonna write this, and like because then you have this cool. I always use the as a example of a split that had two great sides, but I didn't love it was the McCracken's Manges split because it felt so separate. The
hmm,
cover had them like fighting and it was cool, but it just you could tell it was just two things shoved together where if a band does a split, you're missing out if you don't collaborate to the fullest. So that's what it's got to be. It's got to be something where we fucking write songs together and see what happens.
yeah, man. It's like those cartoons when you have crossover, like Batman on Scooby Doo or something. Whoa, this is cool. Like,
Yeah,
how's this gonna work? Yeah, well, that's great, man. Well, this has been really fun, man. I'm really honored
absolutely.
that we got to do it, and thanks so much. You're a good friend, and I know we'll always stay in touch. So hopefully, people will sit through this whole thing and get something out of it.
Likewise, and I fucked up and didn't hit record at the first little chunk, but
Okay,
it was early enough that I know exactly how I'm going to just lead in. So there's no fucking worries. I was like, oh fuck, and I finally hit record, but I think
that's
we're
cool.
good. I'm just gonna summarize. I'm gonna sum up by explaining the beginning of our discussion, but we got plenty of time, so I think it'll be good. But yeah, dude,
Cool.
when I started doing this, I knew immediately I had to bring you on here and talk to you because we always have great conversations and like I respect your music and your everything. I respect more than any of that though the person that I've come to realize that you are behind my makeup. So
Yeah, man. Thanks. Likewise, and you've been there for me in some times when I needed some advice, and you offered a lot of good insight. So it's a
hey man, anytime,
great
absolutely.
mutual connection. But yeah, probably you should edit out the part where I pissed.
Okay.